No, I never hated them. They hated me.
Where the Crawdad Sing is a drama thriller film based on the novel written in 2018 that shows the life of Kai Clark, aka Marsh Girl, growing up in the marshy forest of North Carolina. Her family becomes torn apart as a result of their abusive father, and their mother and her siblings leave home one day in an attempt for a better life. Kai stays home though, in hope that her family is someday going to return, but once her abusive father is the last to leave, then she is truly left alone. This seemed like something that I couldn't imagine not happening, so when I researched online to find the true story behind it, I was amazed at how many people had vlogged about their lives when they escaped the rat race and decided to become truly self-sufficient just like the Marsh Girl. Some of these lives are incredible.
Hello and welcome to my place. This is where I live together with my family.
And now it's time to get my daily reward, which is the eggs.
What does it mean to live off-grid? That is what we're going to be talking about today.
Look at that. I am so far away from people. I've got this place to myself.
And I also like to forage for wild things. Wild greens, wild berries later in the fall, mushrooms throughout the summer, all that kind of thing. So I do try to provide as significant a proportion of my food as I can through the gardening.
About a 24-year-old son lost in the Alaskan wilderness, forced to seek shelter in an abandoned bus.
And so that's why we're out looking for Jonathan, because we want to change this story and have a happy ending.
The pair had survived without contact with the outside world, eating wild rice and foraging for fruit and vegetables.
For every story I've heard about successful wilderness living, there is equally an unpleasant equivalent. The true story that stands out the most to me is when Maria Chapin was kidnapped from her family when she was around 4 years old. This was an attempt to get a ransom for her. Not long after, the kidnappers panicked and they abandoned her in the Colombian jungle when they thought they were going to get caught. She lived in the wild for about 5 years, where she was taken in by a group of capuchin monkeys, which experts say are known to accept young children as their own. She publicly spoken about the difficulties of wilderness living and building a makeshift home and dealing with the struggles of feeding their hunger.
What did you eat and drink?
She explained that she drank a lot of water from the marsh and waterfalls and ate plants that she found growing in the forest. Once she saw where the monkeys in the forest would get food from, she began to copy them. She learned what berries and what plants she could eat safely without getting poisoned. They showed her what different plants she could eat from and what they would eat in order to survive until the next day. She explained though that sometimes the food itself, like the berries, would taste very acidic and be almost too nasty to eat. She often saw monkeys stealing food from hunters, and even explained in an interview that one time a monkey came back with too much food to even carry in its hands. She then began copying these behaviors in order to survive and not die of hunger. She experienced so much loneliness before the monkeys fully welcomed her into their tribe, which adds so much beauty to the animals and Marina's friendship developing. She also discussed what the monkeys' language and dialogue taught her and what their sounds mean in certain situations.
So you've learned to recognize the sounds they would make and get back to them.
It took me a while, but each sound, the screechy one, you have to really be careful. You have to hide away. Many sounds means something. The danger one is the screechy, is the louder one. And then the whistle one is the food one. And each sound have some different things, but it took me a while to get used to it. I just learned from watching what they were doing when every time I hear this sound.
The animals taught young Marina how to hunt by catching birds and rabbits with her bare hands so that she could survive. The story unfortunately gets even sadder though, when 5 years later she was taken by hunters and sold to a brothel, which as you can imagine is a truly terrifying and probably the worst possible way to be joined back with interacting with human beings. Marina has spoken about this moment before, explaining that when she was taken to go to the brothel, all she wanted to do was be back in the jungle with her new family of monkeys that she'd been so close to with the past 5 years.
I just wish I want to go back to the jungle. I had intention of getting out and go back into the jungle. I just went to go with this person because he wasn't very nice.
Thankfully, she eventually escaped the brothel, as a woman-loving grandma from the building next door saw her when Marina escaped. She sent her on a plane to Bogota, the capital of Colombia, where her very wealthy daughter welcomed her and looked after her, as well as paying very well for her to nanny her family. Marina got so close to this family that to this day she even gets invited to their weddings and events, and even sees them as her own family, as well as the monkeys from the jungle, of course. She eventually saved her money and flew to England. Where she wrote a book about her life story. Her life was so unbelievable though, that no one, including book publishers, believed her. It wasn't until she was able to prove everything through evidence and doctors examining that her story was believed and allowed to be officially published. The book she wrote was called The Girl with No Name, The Incredible True Story of a Child Raised by Monkeys, which went on to gain a lot of positive attention and high reviews. She continued to speak about the traumatizing experience and to educate people on the world around them.
And it was dark, and in the dark, I noticed some men carry me, or two men carry me, and felt some woodlands, a lot of plants. I could feel the brushing my, through my arms. And then they dropped me so quickly. They just really, in a rush, they dropped me there. And I just felt so tired. When I saw them going, I just didn't want them to leave me. I was worried about it. I saw their legs, one was a black one and it was a white man, moving away in shorts. And I just wanted to beg them to come back for me, not to leave me there. I kept very hoping that somebody might come back for me. It never happened. And it was a very horrible time.
Make sure to check out our other videos on the true horror stories behind usually horror movies. However, Where the Crawdads Sing is an exception, as the stories itself behind it is the horror. Until next time, horror lovers, peace.